Okay, my name is Samina Yasmin, and I originally come from Pakistan. I'm going to tell you a story about how I met my husband and how, obviously, I got married to him. It was 13th of April, 1992, 20 past 9 a.m. As usual, I was late for a meeting. The reason being that I was told that it's being held in a place called Love House. Now, it sounds very seedy, but it's actually part of the university staff development office. And there was a cross-cultural communication training workshop for academics. And because I was late, I entered the room, and there was only one round table possible where I sat down, and there was this nice man sitting next to me. And the discussion was going on about how do academics talk to students, postgrads, across cultural barriers. So it went on, and then they said, any questions? So I said, yeah, I have a question. I've got a student from Pakistan, and he's driving me mad. And if I don't learn how to deal with him, I'll have a heart attack. So they all laughed, and they thought, it's a cross-cultural communication. You're from Pakistan, he's from Pakistan, what's going on? So I explained to them that actually I was born in Pakistan, and yeah, the culture is very traditional, or it used to be in those days. But I come from a family where my mother was very progressive, and I'm beginning to think that even my father was very progressive from his own background. And they had treated their daughters and sons in a very equal manner. We were all educated in the same way. And that's why when I was 22 years old, that I came to Australia to study at Australian National University. And I'd been studying, and then I'd come to Perth in 1988 after doing my PhD from University of Tasmania and being based at ANU. And I explained to them that, my background probably is such that I don't know how to deal with this student who wants to put me in a mold of being submissive woman, not a supervisor. So anyway, the discussion went on. Then there was tea break. And I love tea. All these people, they were standing around me and they were asking me questions. I think they found it very funny that a woman from Pakistan is in a cross-cultural communication workshop for a Pakistani student. So this guy who was next to me in that round table, he stood there smiling, and he got me a cup of tea. And I thought, wow, this guy is really good. I didn't even ask him to give me a cup of tea, and he's brought it for me. So I thought, it's worth befriending. So we became friends. So I still remember he said, we'll meet up, have lunch together. So we go, and there used to be a Greek cafe, Cafe Neon. So we went there for lunch, and I sat there, and I talk a lot. I always talked a lot, but for a little while when I came to Australia, I was very quiet. I thought I didn't understand the language, even though I spoke English. And so I was very sort of submissive for a few weeks. But by this time, I was back in my usual form. So there was this guy who wasn't talking. And I'm thinking, gee, he's so shy. I really have to make an effort and get this guy to open up. So we talked. And he talked, and we became friends. And we were friends for a year. And until one day, and again, it was 12th of November, 1992. See, I remember the dates. That I suddenly thought, I think I'm in love with this guy. And it was really strange because I think, you might think it's funny, but I had a history of falling in love with people. My friends used to say that I had a 6-month cycle. 2 months I'd be chased by these guys, whosoever that was. 2 months I'd say, okay, guy's worth sort of having some romantic affiliation with. And then they'll give me the flick. And then I'll spend the next 2 months crying. And then 6 months would be over, and I'll fall in love with another guy. So that was My system was used to it. But this is while I was doing my PhD. But even after doing my PhD, when I was teaching, I had started teaching at UWA in 1988, 2nd of May. So I was pretty okay with this. But then this 12th of November 1992, I think I'm in love with this guy. And I feel sick. I physically feel sick. And I don't know what to do with this. And I'm thinking, that's a problem. He's married. And, really not good. And I still remember my friends, all those who had gone through those 6 monthly love cycles for me. They took me for another coffee shop and sat me down and said, please, Samina, get over it. No, we can't go through another 6 monthly cycle. We can't see you crying. Okay. So then I go back and I think, what do I do? So I said a prayer. That's what I always do. And the prayer was, God, really, I think I'm in love with this guy. And I'm feeling pretty sick about it. What do I do? And so it was just, okay, calm down. You can love him. And I think relationships have their own dynamics. So obviously his marriage wasn't strong at that stage. And around the time that it dawned on me that I was in love with him, I think it dawned on him as well that he was in love with me. So then the few months were a bit tough. Once his marriage came to an end, he came to me and said, not leaving my ex-wife for you, I'm leaving her for myself. So again, I'm thinking, that's pretty difficult. Here I am sick with love and he's saying there's no guarantee. Say another prayer. So I said another prayer. Okay, calm down. It's all right, deal with it. And then it was really funny because it stayed on like that. He came to Pakistan, met my mother, met my father, met people around, everyone. And it was still the same. There's no commitment. Once I get over my decisions, I'll decide. So then I thought, okay, now what do I do? So there was one day I remember we were walking past UWA and he said, when we get married? And I said, but you haven't asked me to get married to you yet. And he said, well, you're so sort of progressive, why don't you ask me? So I said, okay. So I had to go down on my knees and say, would you marry me? And he said, I'll think about it. I said, okay. I said, okay, your turn. So he went down on his knees and said, will you marry me? And I said, I thought about it, and I walked away. I said, that's it. But then I thought, no, this is serious. Okay, let's say a prayer. So again, I said a prayer, which is in Islam, it's called istikhara. And it was basically, God, I really do love this man. By then, I was not sick anymore with love. I was in love, but I wasn't sick. And I had sort of started eating again, and I wasn't sort of getting emaciated. And I said, what do I do? And I was like, okay, that's all right. But the question really was, do I marry him as he is? He was a lapsed Christian, and I'm a Muslim. Or do I ask him to convert to Islam? And that's really where I think all that prayer became very significant. Because traditional understanding of Islam is that a Muslim man can marry women of the holy books, so Christians and Jews, but a Muslim woman can't marry outside. So the man has to convert to Islam. And I think it's got a logic that you want to ensure that the community of Muslims follows relatively similar ideas. So it's not that other Muslim women haven't married outside, but it was my question to God and saying, what do I do? And I knew very clearly in my head that if I get married to him, without him converting to Islam, I won't feel comfortable. And it wasn't just because he's not a Muslim. I think it was more to do with my concept of God or my love for God. And again, it might sort of seem very mushy. But I was brought up in a family where, as I said, my mom was very progressive. But she loved poetry. She loved art. She loved literature. But she was a very Sufi kind of a Muslim. So you could do anything as long as your love for God guided you. So I think that's really where I had learned what it means to love God. So not that I'm the perfect sort of good Muslim woman. We all make mistakes. But my question was, for me to get married to a person who's not a Muslim, would I be able to live with myself and think that my love for God still stays supreme compared to any other love? And I think after that prayer that I said, I got to the point where I thought, if I compromise on my love for God, which is the basis of my total being, would I not put myself in a position where I will be open to compromising my love for anyone else? So for James, but also for my love for my parents, for my rest of the family, for the place I live in, for everyone I come in contact with. What kind of a human being would I think I am and feel that I am? And that's really where that prayer was very important. As it happens, he wrote to my parents. Again, I wanted to make sure it was all formal. Even though everyone knew in the family that I was in love with him, but still he had to write to my dad, and he said, yep, if you convert to Islam, we're okay with that. And then in November 1994, we got married, 4th of November, outside in front of the swimming pool in our place. At some stage, I got across this idea that there is a whole structure in Islam of seeking guidance from God. So just as we go to friends and colleagues and counselors, the best guide is God. So I learned that if I really want to make a decision, I'll go to the best source and say, do I do this or not? So I got into doing istikhara. Now, I don't know what traditional religious scholars would say about that, but I've done istikhara for everything that I really think I need to make a decision. And so, touch wood, I'm happy ever since. And I'm glad, because I think if it wasn't for that clarity in myself, probably I would have made mistakes, but I didn't. In this case, I didn't, so I'm very happy with this.